After years of hoping and waiting, Sega has finally delivered the goods. Bayonetta is now available on the PC. After teasing fans with the release of 8-bit Bayonetta on April Fool's Day, a timer appeared on its website suggesting that something else was on the way. It wasn't difficult to guess that it might be Bayonetta itself, but hey, here it is, and we're grateful. The pitch is simple enough then. This is the original Bayonetta, without any of the flaws inherent in the original console versions of the game. Now, when porting an older title such as this, one would naturally expect great performance, but that isn't always the case, and some of Platinum's previous PC conversions have left a lot to be desired. Thankfully, after just 10 minutes with the game, it quickly became evident that Bayonetta for the PC is perhaps the best port of a Platinum Games title we've seen yet. So let's start with the options then. As a game designed specifically for older consoles, we didn't expect much in the way of detail settings, but there are a few tweakables here in the options menu. You can adjust texture and shadow quality as you see fit, for instance, and the game even reports VRAM usage based on your current settings. Well, at least it tries to report it. The numbers we found are not accurate with what is being reported by Afterburner's on-screen display, for instance. There isn't a tremendous difference between most of the settings, but the shadow quality definitely does make a difference, with dynamic shadows appearing much sharper at the high setting, while the lowest setting is pretty chunky. Ambient occlusion is also included as an option here on the PC, as well as the option to toggle HDR lighting. But keep in mind that this is not referring to HDR10 support here, this is just the lighting model used by the game. As an older title then, any modern PC really shouldn't have any problems handling the game at maximum settings then. So when you have that much power left over, there's only one thing to do: push image quality to the max. Thankfully, unlike Metal Gear Rising, Bayonetta offers full support for arbitrary resolutions. Well, almost. While it does support any resolution you care to select, we did notice that if you're using an uncommon resolution, it can cause issues in these film strip cutscenes. The rest of the game displays just fine, however. Unfortunately, in our testing, while there is an MSAA option, it doesn't actually seem to work in the current build. Hopefully this will be addressed in an update. Still, it's possible to achieve excellent image quality here, far exceeding the 720p output of the console versions. The upgrade in image quality is dramatic. And when you stack the two versions up, it becomes clear just how much of an improvement we're talking about here. Despite its age, the artwork really comes alive at higher resolutions. Distant details are crisp and defined, while shimmering and aliasing are eliminated completely. Bayonetta's design really holds up well at high resolutions. And when the camera zooms out, you still get a clear view of the action. So in testing then, I started off with my primary PC using an i7 5820K combined with a GTX 980 Ti, and immediately cranked the resolution up to 2160p, and the results were excellent. All of the PC footage shown thus far in the video was captured using these settings, though the captured assets were downscaled for this video. The performance was so stable at 4K that I decided to go even further and push the resolution up to 2880p or 5K, and yes, the game continued to perform relatively smoothly. Alpha transparencies become a slight issue at this resolution, but more powerful cards should be able to power through it at least. The point is though, whether or not you have a 4K monitor, you can downscale Bayonetta from very high resolutions for great image quality with excellent performance. And just to give you an idea of how much of an improvement we're talking about here, this is how Bayonetta runs on the older consoles. This three-way comparison showcases the game running on Xbox One via backwards compatibility, on Xbox 360, and the Wii U. And as you can see, performance is not really holding steady at all. On top of that, the image quality is limited to just 720p without any form of anti-aliasing, so it doesn't look that great. Oh, and for good measure, here's the PlayStation 3 version stacked up against Xbox One. Remember this? Yeah, it's still one of the worst ports of that generation. A terrible version of Bayonetta to be sure. No thanks. Here's what we get running on the PC at a native 4K resolution then. Yes, a 980 Ti stomps a hole in those older consoles, so it's not exactly a fair comparison, but the point is that the PC version allows you to enjoy the game at a new level of fidelity that vastly exceeds the original. This opening scene is certainly a nice test as well due to the heavy use of alpha transparencies. What's interesting here is that even at 4K, GPU usage hangs around 65 to 70%, which really isn't much. The 5820K isn't doing a lot either, with CPU utilization typically ranging between 5 and 10%. This is one game that you can run on a toaster, though perhaps not on a George Foreman grill. Okay, so one thing to note while we're here, Bayonetta is capped at 60 frames per second, so those hoping for a higher refresh rate will be disappointed here. This isn't a huge surprise given its age, but it's worth noting. On top of that, the game's cutscenes still render at 30 frames per second. And while most scenes play back pretty smoothly, we did notice some frame pacing errors during playback, which is always disappointing. So what about lesser hardware then? Clearly the game isn't that demanding, so I wheeled out an old i5 3570K system with a GTX 970 installed and ran the game through some tests. For my first test I went with a native 4K resolution, and these are the results. Essentially the card almost gets there, but alpha transparencies become an issue at this resolution. Less demanding stages do manage to hold relatively solid, but ultimately 4K proves too much for the 970 even when overclocked. Still, the results here are superior to the original console version of the game. By dropping the resolution to 1440p then, these issues can be eliminated and performance becomes very stable. Frame rate is solid and image quality is great, a huge improvement over the original release. And the older i5 3570K is ample for this game, with CPU utilization hanging between 20 and 30% at all times. So far so good then, right? Well, I decided it would be fun to see how Bayonetta stacks up on much older graphics hardware. I found an old Radeon HD 7770 lying around and stuck it in the system. This is an old budget AMD card from 2012 and is definitely not something you'd find in a modern gaming rig, but why not? Let's do it. Setting the game to 1080p and enabling all the various options, I was surprised to discover that the game manages to run quite well on the old Radeon. Alpha effects do cause performance dips along the way, but the overall experience is still smoother than the previous console iterations of the game, and image quality is greatly enhanced. The point here is that Bayonetta manages to run quite well even on a lesser machine, and it still offers an experience beyond the original. And that's really the key here. The PC version of Bayonetta is a perfect way to revisit the game, or of course enjoy it for the first time. But crucially, it's also great for preservation. This ensures that we have access to a version of the game devoid of performance or image quality issues. It's great to see Sega continue to embrace the PC, and we're extremely pleased by the quality of this port. The cherry on top here is the interface itself. As a port of an older console game, we didn't expect much here, but Bayonetta works quite well even if you're using a mouse and keyboard. Clearly a gamepad is the way to go, of course, but with a menu system that can be navigated smoothly with the mouse, plus easily configurable button options, well, it's fair to say that the development team is taking good care of its users. So yeah, this is the definitive way to experience Bayonetta, even if you're running on a relatively old PC. It looks great, runs great, and plays like a dream. The higher resolution really helps bring out the artwork, and it's wonderful to see this on the PC platform. If you haven't played it before, what are you waiting for? And even if you have, it's worth picking up again, especially if you've only played it on PlayStation 3. Ultimately, it's great to see Sega taking care of the PC crowd. Maybe next time we'll see a port of Vanquish? Come on guys, that's a game that could really benefit from a higher frame rate. But that's all for now though. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. And until next time, this is John signing off.